Thank you for coming and welcome to another session of our Becoming series. This series is where we come together to learn about careers in energy efficiency. And as you can see on our screen now, this series is sponsored by two really great partners, Natural Resources Canada and Electricity Human Resources Canada. Both of these sponsors are really great supporters of the Canadian energy efficiency workforce, and we couldn't do what we do without their support. Each month in our Becoming series, we meet a different leader in the sector. We hear their story of how they got started, and here's some advice about for folks who are looking to follow in their footsteps. Tonight is the first of our three-part series on becoming an entrepreneur. So if you're in the call today, I'd love to know what it is that brought you to this event. Are you thinking about starting your own business? Are you wondering, what kinds of businesses there are in energy efficiency? I'd love to hear just what you're hoping to learn today. We do want to start this event with a land acknowledgement. It's important that land acknowledgements are done with intention. So we want to position ourselves and to provide meaningful and thankful acknowledgement to the First Nations and Métis communities whose land we occupy. I acknowledge that I currently live, gather, and organize on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I recognize the ways in which my presence on this land upholds colonialism and reproduces dispossession and violence for Indigenous people. For those of us who are settlers, we commit to working and learning more about how we can prioritize, upholding conditions of the treaties that govern this land and living respectfully. So please feel encouraged to share your own thoughts and your own land acknowledgement in the chat. A little bit about how tonight's event will be happening. We are recording the event, so if you miss any information, you can go back and review the recording. We have a hard cutoff time at 5:45 Eastern, so we've got about 45 minutes together tonight. Hopefully you have some questions for Darrell, and if you do, you can put them in the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of your screen at any time. And we'll have lots of time after the presentation to get to those questions. You can also raise your virtual hand during the Q&A section, and I can unmute you to ask your question out loud. So this week, our speaker is Darrell Brown. Darrell is a Cree business owner based in Winnipeg. He's the president of Kisik Clean Energy and a founding member and current chair of the Aboriginal Chamber of Commerce based in Manitoba. He's also the newly elected chair of the Indigenous Clean Energy Network, a social enterprise whose role is to advance renewable energy for Indigenous people across Canada. And so without any further ado, Darrell, I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Kirstin. Tanzi, everyone. Anin. My name is Darrell Brown. I am a Cree and English mixed blood Indigenous business owner. I have two companies, Kisik Clean Energy and Kisik Commercial Furniture. The clean energy company, that's what we're talking about today. I'll give my land acknowledgement, and I'll say that was a pretty intense land acknowledgement by Kirstin, so that's great to hear. I'm coming to you from Treaty 1 territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And here in Manitoba, we get really very reasonable Manitoba hydroelectricity rates at the expense of our Treaty 5 cousins who have all lost their land, been flooded, lost their livelihood and their ways of life when massive hydroelectricity dams were being developed, and we just recently finished another one. So I want to acknowledge that at the expense of Treaty 5, we're enjoying a level of low electricity rates. Also, our water here in Winnipeg comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation, just on the border of Manitoba and Ontario. And 45 years ago, they built an aqueduct and cut off that community, and they were literally stranded with no connection to any mainland because of the water that was being pushed to Winnipeg for our drinking water. So again, want to acknowledge that, Shoal Lake 40 at the expense of their community and their people, we have a clean drinking water still today. I'll ask for the first slide, please. So my story of how I got started goes back 7 years now, and there was a program being offered called the 2020 CALIS program, and it was through a social enterprise called Indigenous Clean Energy. I heard about the 2020 CALIS program 2 years prior, so that would be 9 years ago. when Chris Henderson was presenting on it at a mining conference in Vancouver. I hounded Chris Henderson for 2 years. When the program finally launched, I was very fortunate to be one of the 20 that were accepted into the program. So the Catalyst program is a intense summer program that trains you as an Indigenous person in clean energy, in executing and completing your Indigenous energy project for your community or your client. It's all summer long. It's very it's just very well staffed. We have everything from business mentors in the clean energy sector, a lot of them being industry people who have completed very successful large energy projects in Canada. Could be anything from small solar all the way up to big hydro. These people are the mentors. They become the teachers, faculty. We have coaches. They really surrounded us with all this support in the Catalyst program. And we did 3 weeks, 1 week at a time on site. So they chose the sites and we would be in class for that week, living together and bonding together. And then also we're visiting Indigenous renewable energy projects in the areas. So they strategically focused the location of each of our intensive on-sites so that we could get out and do tours and see, hydroelectric or wind or solar or whatever. It was a very good program, highly recommended. It's really evolved since the first year when I took it. Now it's actually comes with a sizable chunk of money that the graduate gets to actually work on their projects. So thank you Enercan for partnering with ICE Network and the Catalyst program. So that's how I got started. Before that, I was in the office furniture business for 15 years, and it's fine. My office furniture business does pretty good, but I really wanted to do something meaningful. I wanted to get away from a commodity. I wanted to work in energy efficiency, and mostly I wanted to help the First Nations that are struggling and need to exercise their sovereignty. And I'll talk more about that later. So let's go to the next slide, please. Oh, we're going to roll a video.
Is 3 intensive months with 3 one-week sessions when we come together with all catalysts and mentors, learning about how clean energy can be developed and implemented in their communities. There's a lot of webinar support and there's a lot of support after, but at the core of it, it's that gathering together and spending time in 3 weeks in different parts of Canada that really fuses the program learning.
It's about 1 million BTUs is what this thing is. Heated by wood, then it's just compost, biodegradable ash, nothing's bad in it. These are 2 geothermal wells that are connected here.
I would call it a condensed executive MBA in clean energy for Indigenous leaders that amplifies Indigenous agency and inclusion in the clean energy sector.
Such a momentous day in Colonial country. We really want to thank you for joining us for the Colonial First Nation Wind Energy groundbreaking ceremony.
It's a national program that we run across the country in all different locations throughout the summer. What are our goals? Most importantly, a network that is supported beyond the program to make sure communities are maximizing the benefits socially and economically out of clean energy projects. What it is the opportunity to forge this community where we can support one another when that project is perhaps not going well or you've hit a roadblock, and that it's not necessarily the end. People who've been there before and can help with those real-world examples of how to move forward towards energy sovereignty.
So here is what a wood chip boiler looks like when it's fully running. So all the heat and flame is directly applied to the water, just circulated through the system. Go ahead and close that now. When I joined the Catalyst, my biomass project was in the pre-feasibility stage, and now I'm a mentor and I have a fully built operational project, and I can now share those experiences with the new cohort of Catalysts.
2020 Catalyst program, it offers the greatest potential for us to transform lives. The harsh reality of a worldview that believes that we own the land is coming to face us in a way that is going to have enormous negative consequences. We actually don't own the land owns us. A lot of people euphemize this conversation by calling it climate change. It's actually about species survival.
But I wonder, am I 60? Because the houses are terribly inefficient and we suffer from mold problems.
But if we make a home that's more energy efficient, it's going to last longer, which means you don't have to replace it in 10 years. Well, who wins? Well, we all do.
I think the 2020 Catalyst program, it gives opportunity for Indigenous communities to actually be a big player in the clean energy and the climate change movement. They equip you with the right skills, the right connections, teachers, mentors.
Indigenous revitalization of nationhood in conjunction with all of these technological changes. Time is really ripe for change.
2020 Catalyst program, they really empower you to be somebody that you really want to be inside.
I don't think we can have a clean energy future for our country, the planet, or each community without Indigenous and local people being a part of that change. The Catalyst program is therefore essential to the future of energy and the future of our country. Indigenous clean energy!
Perfect. So that's it. And do you want to stay on this slide or go to the next one?
I just want to speak one more speaking point for the Catalyst program. And that is that we really help each other out. So even though there's over 100 graduates now working in the field, we're all connected through the ICE network. And let's say that I have I've hit a barrier with my utility. Let's say it's Manitoba Hydro. I'll ask my catalysts in BC who are working on a similar project, how did you get BC Hydro to the table? Or it could be vice versa. If I hear or see an issue that is being put out on our ICE network and they're hitting barriers and they're struggling with project launch or development, that's where we all come in. Because we've been now working in the industry for years, we become just a source of information for each other. So yeah, let's go to the next one, please. So just want to explain a little bit. On the left, you see a solar array, two small buildings. That's actually a microgrid in one building and battery storage in the other building. This is Gull Bay First Nation, 2.5 hours north of Thunder Bay. It was the first project that I worked on after graduating from the 2020 Catalyst program. That was all just bush. And now it's fully developed, it's fully operational, and it's right across the road from their diesel generating electricity station. So this is an example of, Gull Bay First Nation being told by Hydro One and Hydro One remotes that you'll never be on the grid. So Chief and Council, started their project and engaged us. Actually, it was engaged in Lumos Energy, which I was a subcontractor to. Top right, we're actually visiting an experimental station with the federal government, and I think this was near Ottawa, and they're showing us these are the kinds of wood burning fuel that we make for our systems, and they're explaining in this particular photo, all the different elements of, was your dry wood, is it pellets, is it got moisture in it, that's not good. Like all these tours that we did really were helpful and help us focus on thinking about clean energy and how we can help our our clients or our communities. Bottom right, just a close-up of Gull Bay First Nation, and again, the E-House housing the microgrid and the battery storage building. And it was just quite astounding. Like I learned so much from that project. That was a 3-year project, and we launched in August of 2 years ago. Yeah, August of 2 years ago was the official launch. Let's go to the next slide. So again, very fortunate that Chris Henderson, who owns Lumos Clean Energy Advisors, was engaged with the Gull Bay First Nation and said, Darrell, you know, you're a graduate, you're very close proximity to Gull Bay First Nation because you're in Winnipeg. Would you like to work with us on this project? And I said, absolutely. So Lumos was hired as the advisory, and there I learned in those 3 years how to project manage, but also how to protect the interests of the First Nation, which is very important, obviously, and also how to interact with industry. So, you know, what we thought was going to be a $7 million project turned into $9 million. What should have been a year and a half went to a 3-year project, but it's because of the new things we were doing, you know, integrating solar, battery, microgrid into diesel. It's just so new for a remote First Nation. And I just thought it was real interesting to work. And so I'll talk about my next project. Let's go to the next slide. Sayisi Dene First Nation in northern Manitoba. When I say northern Manitoba, like they're almost on the Nunavut border. They're as north as you can go for any community. And Sayisi Dene is remote fly-in. They're on diesel. The chief started talking to me in September of last year and said, tell me about Gull Bay. Tell me what went on there. So did a couple of you know, video conference calls, and the chief and council and the community said, yes, we want to engage and we want to go that route, which is reducing your dependency on diesel. So one of the first things we did was when we got some financing together, we chartered a plane, flew in. Stantec was our engineering firm. You know, you can see here that a local excavator is digging up. So they're doing the Geotech survey right there. Also did a land survey while we were on site. It's really exciting for the community. They're getting geared up. We're really engaging with them. And then community engagement is the most important thing when you're doing an Indigenous project. If you don't have the support of chief and council, who's, you know, technically your client, but also of all the membership of the community, whether they live on reserve or off reserve, you're not going to make it. So really important for us to, you know, we threw up a Facebook page right away, and we started inviting community members and started sharing information. This is what we're thinking. This is what we're doing. This is what the study and pre-feasibility is going to be all about. Chief Yasi from Sayisi Dene and myself just did a video, an informational video. Well, he's a brilliant chief. Like, he listened to me talk, and then he said everything I said in his language, in Dene. So now you have a video both in English and in their Dene language, and anyone can watch it from the community. So if the elders aren't good with English, they get to hear it in their own language. It's brilliant. Let's go to the next slide. So back to Gull Bay First Nation. So when we actually launched a couple of years ago was quite the celebration. You can see we have National Chief Perry Bellegarde there, and our regional AFN chief. You've got AJ Escuega in the blue ribbon shirt, and then there's Kara and myself. So us three on the end, we're all Catalyst graduates. And Kara was in my year. AJ came the year after me. But AJ Escuega is the energy coordinator for Gull Bay First Nation. And you can see how much diesel we had already displaced by the time we did our official launch. And I think that Kirstin's going to throw a link in the chat for anyone who wants to save it for later. but there've been a lot of stories. I'm telling you, it's been documented to death. There's probably 8 or 9 different videos made of it, but the one that we really like is the one that a professor from Concordia did with her students, and it's just a great story to tell. So let's go to the next slide. So questions. I'm probably a little bit quick here. We're about 18 minutes, but I really appreciate the opportunity. You know, just trying to tell you how I got into the industry, what's going on with me now. A lot of the projects that Kisik Clean Energy does are, you know, also for the province of Manitoba. Like, it's not just Indigenous led projects. We got invited to bid on powering up VHF radio towers in northern Manitoba with solar and battery. It's part of the early warning fire system, which we all know is really important these days because everything's burning. So we bid on the project, we won it, and we got our industry partner to work with us with Kisik Clean Energy, and we flew in and installed battery and solar into these VHF towers. So they only need to be operational during the summer when it's high fire season. And so those are some of the work contracts that are going on. The most recent contract that I got was a consulting company, an energy consulting company, wanted to bid the province of Manitoba about energy policy and energy change, and what, you know, looking forward for the province of Manitoba, what changes should be made. So this project did have an Indigenous component to it. So they approached me and said, look, would you like to bid with us? We were looking for an Indigenous you know, clean energy advisor. And I said, yeah. So we just found out we were successful in that too. Yeah, and you know, it's a great industry to be in. It doesn't matter if it's an industry or I mean, if it's Indigenous or mainstream. There's so much to be done in the field, in the whole sector. And, you know, I'm doing my small portion of trying to help the First Nations get off of diesel, right? You hear Sayisi Dene chief talk about high cancer rates in his community, walking through the housing, and all you can smell is diesel in the winter because they're burning it in their homes, right, to heat their homes. And then these tanks are old and it's leaking. I mean, the problems with diesel are a lot of issues, but again, it is a stable fuel source, and so they need it in the winter, which is just incredibly harsh winters up there. But with the technology today, one more thing I'll mention: we got about 25% penetration of renewable energy into the diesel, so we offset 25% of what they normally would have burnt in diesel annually, which is 100,000 liters. With Sayisi Dene, we're pretty sure we can do 60 to 65% penetration. And we're taking a whole new approach. Instead of scaling the solar and the battery, you know, we oversize the solar, we oversize the battery. We also put in a couple of wind turbines, because then now you can generate energy at night when the wind's blowing. So those are the changes from Gull Bay to Sayisi Dene. And with those changes, our feasibility, which just got finished, shows that we can achieve that. So really excited. You know, NRCan's been a big supporter, and we're just accessing some capacity building money right now, and then we'll be going for project development. So I'll just leave it there.
Awesome. Thank you, Darrell. I think your story is such a great example of how important mentorship is. I've been really lucky to meet a few other people who have been part of the Catalyst program, and I've always just been so impressed. It's so well done, and it just seems like it really sets people up to succeed and to have the connections and the support that they need to keep learning and growing in the energy efficiency sector and clean energy sector as a whole. So it just seems like a great opportunity, great program.
It is.
Perfect. And so now it's time to ask questions. So if anyone in our audience wants to know anything more about, you know, Darrell's work, his path, how he got there, about, you know, starting a business, anything along those lines, now is your chance to ask. So I will keep an eye out in case anyone has their hands up. So I do see someone wants to ask a question. So I will unmute you here. So you should be able to unmute your mic and ask your question any second now, Meredith. If you're having any tech issues, you do need to unmute. So you should have the option to unmute yourself there. But if you're having any issues, let's see if you have any questions about the tech, let me know in the chat, and we can come back to you. So hopefully you're able to ask that question in a few seconds. But while we wait, if anyone else has a question, or Meredith, if you want to just pop your question into the Q&A, that's another way to ask your questions. So we do have some that were submitted in advance. So one question that was asked was, with all of these different roles that you take on, you're managing 2 different businesses and, taking opportunities like this. How do you manage your schedule with so many, different projects on the go?
That's a good question. You need to grow your businesses. The reason why I was able to get into the energy sector is because I had a well-established company on the furniture side, and it allowed me to, step away and start doing some new interesting work. So that was really lucky for me. Now, both companies are really busy, and so I'm finding that I'm going to need, support both as an assistance in each company. We have staff, but eventually when you grow, you start to manage. You become maybe a personal assistant for each company, that kind of thing. I'm really careful with my volunteer time, so I sit on a couple of boards, but and I get asked all the time to sit on boards. I have a designation for the Institute of Corporate Directors, and it's another designation that makes you a better board member. But you've got to be really careful. Unfortunately, Indigenous people, I guess you trying to get diversity on boards, it's hard. And then when you get asked, you're like, well, there's no way that I could take on any more. But just going back to your original question, you've got to manage your time, and that is evenings and weekends, depending on the intensity of the projects you're working on. I can tell you that with Sayisi, Dene, once we get into project development and we start building, it's going to take a lot of my time. So I'll need to put in those safeguards where Kisik commercial furniture runs itself, and I only go in when I'm needed, and be spending more of my time on the intense project related duties of actually building with Sayisi Dene. So I hope that answers it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think you mentioned some of you've been part of the Catalyst program, you have the Institute of Corporate Directors. Which of those experiences, or for someone maybe who's looking to become an entrepreneur or looking to follow in your footsteps, which of them do you think was the most important or most valuable to you in that process?
I'll say that Indigenous clean energy was really what trained me and got me in working in the clean energy business. So that's easily my preference. Now, the Institute of Corporate Directors, it's a designation that costs a lot of money. I think it was $15,000 to take that course. But I have a business mentor, and that's another thing that I'll firmly recommend for anyone who's listening right now. You need to get a mentor. It doesn't matter if that mentor is in your industry or your sector, as long as they are experienced business people and they're willing to spend some time with you. So for 16 years, I've had the CEO of $1 billion company as my business mentor. And every year we recap, our meetings, we meet once a month. And he would say, why aren't you taking the ICD course? Because he knew that I wanted to elevate my board director levels. And so finally I just said, I got to do it. And it did turn out very good for me. As you mentioned, like currently chair the board for Kisik, well, my company, but the Indigenous Clean Energy Network. And it's exciting board too to be on. It's a volunteer position, but it's great to watch the organization grow. We're probably going to hit like a $4 million annual budget here, which is pretty good, and it's good. So lots of programs running, lots of training, lots of youth engagement. So really happy with what senior management and staff are doing within the ICE network.
Awesome. Yeah, it can be tough sometimes, I think, to decide on those more like anything that's, that takes a bit of money, like committing or going back to school, or some of those accreditations that take that financial commitment. But it's good to know that, when you think about it and take your time and make the right choice, it's worth it to go through some of those programs as well.
It really is. And you know what? I took a loan. I didn't have $15,000 kicking around. So I took a BDC loan, a Business Development Canada loan, which I'm still paying off. But again, I'm actually being paid for my time now on a few other boards. And so it is becoming, value for your money as you progress up the levels of directorship.
Awesome. And one other question, what is it that first drew you to starting a business rather than working for somebody else?
Yeah, that's another good question. So this was years ago, holy long time ago, I was working for an insurance company, and I said, I can't do this anymore. So they offered a buyout. I took the buyout. I bought my first business. I didn't know what I was doing, to be honest. And, I ran that business for 4 years, but I learned a lot of hard lessons, and I ended up selling that business for, 50 cents on the dollar. But it taught me a lot. So then I went back to school, and I went to Red River College, and I got an international business advanced diploma. And, you got to keep improving yourself. You need to always keep improving yourself. Doesn't matter if it's a week course or a month or a year, like you make the time to always further your education. And that's how I've been able to learn lots and also, stay focused on growing my companies.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's the thing that scares me most about entrepreneurship is you have to be comfortable with the risks and taking risks. And that's pretty freaky for me.
Yeah, I always say it's putting your butt on the line, and it is. Like once you go out there, you're on your own. And so you better make it work, because you don't want to end up going back into the, the 9 to 5 if what your heart's telling you is that you want to be an entrepreneur. So you just got to make it work, but don't be discouraged. I mean, I consider my first business a failure, even though I ran it and operated for 4 years. Like I should have looked ahead and saw the technology that was coming, and it changed the whole business. And I had to get out of there as fast as I could with as little loss as I could handle. And so, but it was an eye-opener.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. Meredith, I don't think we were able to figure out your tech issues, but if you do want to get in touch, Darrell's email is on the screen, or I can put mine in the chat as well. And hopefully we're able to answer your questions still. And with that, I do want to say, let me just put my email in there. Darrell, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story, to share a little bit of that mentorship with everyone who's in the audience today, and for everyone who watches this video later on. I think it's really helpful to hear the real stories, the good and the bad, the failure and the success. I think that's really important. So thank you for that. If anyone has any questions, like I said, feel free to connect with me or Darrell after the call. We love, I don't want to speak for you, Darrell, but I do love hearing from people, and I love, getting those questions and following up. So looking forward to that.
Always open for questions and a good conversation. Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. And be sure to join us next month. We're having an evening with Chi-Ting Lo for part 2 of our 3-part Becoming an Entrepreneur mini-series. And one final thank you to our sponsors, Natural Resources Canada and Electricity Human Resources Canada, for making this all possible. And with that, have a great afternoon, evening, or morning, everyone, depending on where you're joining from, and we'll see you next month.